Hello, everyone. I'm James Daniel. This is the Love Foundry podcast. I'm in Maui today at Taylor's house. Sam, go away. The panting in the background is not an elephant, it's their dog. Taylor and family are in Alaska, and I'm in their house taking care of Sam. And the chickens, and the cat, and the plants, and me. So the podcast today is about blending the head and the heart, which is a huge subject. I'm out on her porch, by the way, because I just love it. I just love looking out. I would turn things around so you could see the ocean out that way, but it's too much glare. It puts me in too much shadow. So this is it. This is best we get. But blending the head and the heart is the challenge of a spiritual consciousness. The head, illumined by the Buddha's perfect mind, surrenders itself to love, which is the heart of the Christ consciousness in nature. My ability to do that is probably as limited as anyone else's. Maybe in some respects more so. Absolutely, in some respects more so. So the difference between us and those great beings, such as the Buddha and the Christ, who have no illusions left, is what we're going to talk a little bit about. So you can begin the long and somewhat difficult process of fusing yourself with head and heart and love and illumination in such a way that all illusion disappears. Of course, the problem with that is that as illusion disappears, what are you left with? You're left with reality. And because we have such a nodding acquaintance with reality, it's difficult for us to live in it. It would make, in some respects, no sense. So little do we know of who we are and how reality works, even at this dense environment in the material world. So we have to gradually grow into it. But grow into it we must if we are to dispel illusion, empower ourselves with love, and live according to the great gifts that the divine nature, the nature of life itself, is constantly and continuously pouring down upon us. Everything I see when I look out here at Maui, which is a beautiful place, is the result of that pouring forth into matter, and matter assuming various forms, plants, trees, insects, us, as a result of that embodying of reality, the soul life of nature into the material world. Without that, the material world would be barren as the moon. So what we're seeing out there in all these beautiful things, butterflies and birds and plants here in Hawaii, is light reflected from the material covering of their reality. Their energetic spiritual nature attracts atoms of matter which cannot radiate the life in them sufficiently for us to see past the illusion of reflected light on them, from them. So that shapes all these creatures in the material form they're assumed. And light, sunlight, material light, because remember, the sun is a burning ball of gas as it lights the earth. It is also a spiritual sun and a spirit sun, all three, but that's the one we see most of the time. So that reflecting itself off of the material sheath of all the things around us creates this vast, seemingly real illusion. Now it's solid, you could pound on it, drown in it, fly through it. So why would it be considered illusion? Only because it doesn't represent the full spectrum of reality. It just represents to our eyes and to our ears and our other physical senses the reflection. Now, if we want to see the actual emanation, we have to see past the reflection. Now, that's difficult to achieve as an optical power, as an audible power. It's possible because every outer sense has an inner sense, which gradually over time is getting more and more sensitive, even though matter gets more and more dense and more material around us. We are developing the inner ability to pierce matter and connect directly with the inner senses in us to the reality that is hidden behind the illusion. So that's going on. But we don't have to wait for that spectacular opening of consciousness to occur in order to employ love as a direct power in us, affecting our lives, affecting everything we do and think and feel and touch, so that we become aligned with and at one with, at one being at one-ment, or atonement as they refer to it biblically. But to become at one with love in us doesn't require seeing it. Seeing it will obviously follow, because that tremendous stimulation of the inner senses will happen. And it's all hand in hand and gradual. And the reason it's gradual is to keep consciousness, the sense of identity, who we are, stable in the world. We don't want to lose our orientation to self. Our orientation to reality is already lost. That was lost when we were born into matter, and the senses closed off all the inner reality. Then our awareness of it, physical awareness of it, conscious awareness of it, was lost. And we see this in a child, in an infant who looks out at the world, not understanding what anything is, asking for love. Doesn't know how to give it, even though it is full of it. It is an outpost of love in a human being. But we're blind to it. Hello, Sam. So we have to take our time to reawaken and rekindle all our inner senses and inner relationships, so that they can become a working, participating part of our daily life. Now, this is happening gradually. Okay. All right, Sam. You want to come up, show yourself? No. All right. Here's Sam. There you are, Sam. Just so you know, it's not easy being Sam. All right. So blending the head and the heart, which was the subject of it, is fundamental to the union of both the conscious awareness of things and the direct sensation of our union or our oneness with those things that we see and hear and taste and touch and feel, and that our mind builds thought forms around. If we only see the illusion, the reflected light, then we build the world that we're all living in now. And that becomes a collective structure, a collective consciousness, which we know isn't being represented by the people in it as it actually is. Now, of course, the Democrats in America know this about the Republicans, and the Republicans know this about the Democrats. But what we can know is that both sides of the opposites, of all the different opposites, are only seen partially. And until they fuse the two sides of the opposites, recognizing the necessity of unity of head and heart, we're not going to have an ability to see the whole, because we have chosen one side or the other of the opposites of illusion. Now, that's difficult. It's difficult to accept. It's difficult to accept that we ourselves are blind, see only half of reality, and have tried to formulate a wholeness out of half, which will never work. And worse than that, to find it in our heart or our head to accept the other half that we have already judged as unreal. In fact, it is unreal. The Democrats aren't wrong. Sam, my hand is on the end of my arm, not so you can lick it. The Democrats, just to take two sides of the opposites that happen to be in discussion on most of the time around us, the Democrats, Sam is consistent of nothing else. The Democrats aren't wrong, except about themselves. The Republicans aren't wrong, except about themselves. The other side of us, the opposite of us, man's view of women, North's view of South, whatever we think of as opposite, is illusionary because it's only half. But we, thinking we are not illusionary, because of course we're a whole, when we look in the mirror, we see somebody that we think is pretty damn good. It's challenging. None of these are things to worry about. None of these are things to get off into too much. They're just things to recognize. Limitations of the eyes, limitations of the ears, limitations of the mind in synthesizing the two together so that we can reveal the wholeness that hides behind the illusion all the time. And then when someone shows up to talk to us about reality, they sound goofy. Or at best, they sound too mystical to be interpreted. So we've spent all this time trying to interpret the Bible, the experiences of Jesus, as whole through one half or the other, interpreting in a material way experiences that were coming out of the wholeness of the spiritual reality that we live within all around us here. So joining the head and the heart is a step into penetrating into that world, making ourselves comfortable in that world by seeing the fifth kingdom beyond the fourth. We're in the fourth kingdom, which is the material kingdom. The fifth kingdom within us transcends that material limitation of reflected light. What are you chewing on, Sam? That's enough chewing. He's young. So let go of the idea that you have to hold it all in your conscious awareness. Just think in terms of fusing the head and the heart, of fusing the mind of nature itself, the mind of the Buddha, the perfect mind of God, if you want to think about that in terms of a whole being, because there is such a thing. If you want to think of that merged with the perfect heart, the heart that opens you into the heart of all nature, then you will be moving in the direction of wanting to know the whole of you, not the whole of God, the whole of nature, the whole of everything. That's a long journey, but the whole of us. What are you? In you and without you, without and within. Just that much. That's certainly not all of us, but that's the next obvious step. The spirit nature of a being, a woman, a man, a dog, the spirit nature of creatures, of the universe, is an entirely different thing. It's operating in a dynamic and an empowerment and a frequency that love pours out into it to with mind and heart cause it to exist, but is not cognizable to us. We can't add spirit to our conscious awareness except in the sense of empowerment, except in the sense of feeling vitality, except in the sense of being alive. When you feel that sense of aliveness, that's inspiriting. But spirit itself, that's a further journey. Now, at the Love Foundry, our purpose is to open ourselves through workshopping it, through practicing it, into a state where these conditions of unity of head and heart, opening of inner senses, and realization of the power of love as a third leg on the stool of life. Life has three legs on its stool. Will, which is the father aspect in the spiritual sense. Love, which is the created son aspect, what comes into existence as the result of the other two. And thirdly, the feminine aspect, the Divine Mother, or the Holy Ghost. The Holy Ghost is a weird term. It has meaning to Christianity, but it also has meaning in another form to other spiritual perceptions, like Brahma. The intelligence aspect of life, ensouled by love, is the mother of the universe. All soul added together, intelligently loving, without regard or respect for differentiations, right or wrong, good or bad, is the third aspect. Now, we're going to discover how the fusion of these three in ourselves brings us forward into awareness of not only those different parts of our nature, but how all added together, those parts form the unity, the oneness that allows us not to just feel that the whole outer universe is one thing, but that the entire inner universe, with its many kingdoms and many levels, as the biblical commentary has it, in my Father's house are many mansions. All of these things have meaning when we see the wholeness and not just this surface. The surface is built with the mind relating to the eyes and reflected light and how we feel about them instead of how to love that vision. When we love, the vision that our eyes perceive of material reflected light, then we are combining the inner unity of love with the outer image of reflected light. This brings unity in us. It brings mind and heart together. So you don't have to perceive the entire inner world of love in terms of what we look like there, who you are there, who Sam is there, who the birds are there, who the angels are, archangels, beings of great age, maturity, and spiritual size are there. We don't have to have all of that because they are all ensouled with love. And when we bring the head and the heart into union in ourselves, intentionally, we are bringing the inner and the outer into union. And that's to whatever degree we're able to do that right now in yourself by just letting it come in. Imagine for a moment that your heart, the center in you, that by its beating, which is established by a function of ourselves in spirit, actually making the heart beat continuously. There are things going on that are not seen by us. So the fact that our heart is connected to a heart in a higher place or an inner place or a deeper place, and that heart is in turn connected to a greater heart, which gives it a pathway of livingness and lovingness, bigger and bigger, greater and greater, more and more, until you reach the heart of the universe, which by its presence, causing the universe to thrill to life, some way finds its way through a pathway to our spirit, and from our spirit to the inner nature of our soul life, and from that nature to the outer world of a beating heart. It's a fantastic unity, which, if you saw it as it is, would be very confusing because it would be a swirling field of living energy, loving energy, ecstatic energy, all sharing a sense of eternal, continuous outpouring life. That's not enough for us. Sensing it in yourself, as you can right now, is a nice addition to us, but we need to blend that with the head. We need to blend that sense of union and unity throughout the universe on all dimensions, in all places, with the head of us that says, I am in that, and I always will be in that, and I will always have a form and a presence and a location and a size and a continuity and a relationship to all other lives in that. Always will. Because you are as endless as the life that floods from head and heart in union. So this is a simple equation, really. It's not a complex equation. It's us realizing what we already are. And the first step in that realization is blending head and heart and all the meanings of what that tells us when we do it, what shows up in our world as we act on that. The first thing that shows up is a sense of reality to the love that is in the heart, in the mind, and the sense of the reality of intelligent, effortless, intuitive knowing in the mind, in the heart, thinking in the heart, feeling in the mind, feeling love, sensing love, realizing love transcends feeling and is itself the source of all the different feelings. The mind does not have to figure all this out. because the heart already knows it. The heart already knows its oneness with love throughout the universe. There's no questioning it in the heart. The only thing that questions it is in the mind, where it says, I can't see it. I can't relate one to the other because it comes from one central source. It comes from one place of union. So how do I compare the left and the right? How do I compare myself to the other? Because that's what I've been doing to establish this duality in me. By a new form of duality, a new kind, one that gives you an entirely different ability. The inner duality and the outer duality form a unity. That unity happens when head and heart combine, and it gives you a completely new understanding of the universe, of the self, of love, and of thought, and illumination of thought, and illumination of self. And the power of love, because you now suddenly are fully aware of its power as the only generative, creative energy of the universe. So instead of being an effect without the awareness of love, we become empowered by it. The heart becomes empowered, and the mind agrees to be empowered, for our identity to be empowered, for our union of self to become one with love and one with mind. And as a whole being, animated by will and purpose, we can go forth in the universe, in this world, with each other, realizing we are all in exactly the same situation. The entire human race is one group being, just a small group being on this planet, but a real one. Let it all synthesize. Synthesis is the law that governs will. So there's a part of our will which, while it wants to be Marco Polo and travel the world, while it wants to get to the top of Everest, while it wants to achieve its ambitions, also wants ultimately to synthesize with everything and everyone, because it knows it is already everyone. So eventually we're going to want to know about that. We're going to want to experience it through our senses. Can't stop it because it's true and it's in us. And this takes away all that separativeness of thinking we should dislike, hate, or destroy some other part of ourselves. So that step of head and heart, set it aside in your consciousness. It's a purpose that we're going to complete. We're going to bring these two into union, not just figure out the head and figure out the heart and keep the two separate. We're going to bring them into union and fusion, and thereby release an entirely new idea of self, a self that blends love and wisdom. Thank you, everyone. Thanks for taking the time with me while I'm in Hawaii. And I'll be back in California soon. Maybe a couple more podcasts if I can force myself to get back on a plane. Thank you very much. See you next time.
Don't you wanna know?